Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. And welcome everybody to this week's edition of the Juice Box. I do believe this is episode 20, so thank you for hanging on with me up until now. Hopefully you'll hang on for another 20 or 40 or however many we got here on the Juice Box. But I am Juice Springsteen here once again to discuss the week that was in pro wrestling. Not too crazy of a docket this week. However, next week will be pretty nuts, especially with this show, which we'll get to in a little bit. But as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Juicy Steen. You can follow my wrestling t-shirt Instagram at Juicy Wrestling Closet. You can also follow this show at juicysteen.podbean.com. iTunes, you can also find the Juice Box, as well as Google Podcasts. If you listen to this on iTunes, it would be greatly appreciated if you could rate this 5 stars and drop a review if you so choose. This week, not too much going on. We have, a lot of outside the ring news to discuss, and we will discuss such. I'll have a little bit of an announcement for next week, tentative, but probably locked in. And yeah, we're gonna go through a few topics today. We're definitely gonna touch on the AEW Collision announcement. We're gonna be going over the current Night of Champions card. We're gonna discuss some of the Double or Nothing stuff that's coming to fruition as well. We'll go over what happened a little bit on Raw, some Dynamite as well. I'm going to give a vintage wrestling pay-per-view to discuss. Also, today is May 19th, which, wow, if you are a wrestling fan, you know this as a date that honestly, randomly, is something you remember as a wrestling fan. In 2006, Kane, who now is in politics, but as Glenn Jacobs, Kane as Glenn Jacobs, but Kane was starring in a feature horror movie that I did see in theaters in 2006 called See No Evil, which I enjoyed. I really did. I enjoyed as a horror movie fan. I thought it was a good little film. It's a lot better than some of the lower budget ones that I've seen in the past, but I enjoyed See No Evil. But so it was coming out on May 19th, which, it was Kane was the lunatic in the film, yet they wanted to promote the movie on screen during Raw and WWE programming, which is awesome, because every time someone would mention the date, May 19th, it would drive Kane into just an absolute frenetic, maniac frenzy, and who would just beat up whoever would say it. Famously, Shawn Michaels, I believe, did he have a referee? I think he was a referee. He had a guy with a May 19th, like all over his shirt that he had. Oh, it was Rob Conway. It was Rob Conway and Kane in a match, and Shawn Michaels had to referee that match. And he on the shirt it said May 19th all over it, and he put it on Rob Conway. May 19th is an interesting little moment in wrestling history. And yeah, I remember it vividly. I remember just loving that. And it's stuck, and it is still stuck, and that's why it's really cool that today's episode of The Juice Box is releasing on May 19th to celebrate the movie, to celebrate the fun and bizarre in professional wrestling. And we will now get into some of the Juice Box's news here. At the end of this show, we're going to end this show doing the name of the segment. I really don't know what it is yet. I haven't really sat down in the writer's room to come up with something. However, it is being conceived in my mind over time. We don't know what it's going to be called yet. It could just be Ask Juice, to be honest with you. But it seems just like a rehash of several other podcasts where you ask the host questions, or you email them, tweet them questions, and they answer them on the pod. I will be doing that. So it could just be Ask Juice, but I will be answering some questions that were fielded to me by some of my wrestling fan friends, who there are many. I sent out some stuff being like, hey, if you got some interesting ideas, some questions, let me hear them, and I'll address them. It's fun to get that banter. And speaking of banter, a few programming notes. It's tentative, but it probably will fall in June. Not really sure when, but there will be a second edition of Triple Threat Theater, which will involve Josh Cross and Donnie, who were previously on the program to discuss a plethora of topics, which was the first time we had guests on the show, and I had a great time talking to both those guys. I do believe they will be back in a capacity, the same type of capacity, discussing some topics we'll go over for Triple Threat Theater, which will be fun. That should be in June, tentatively. That will be updated as I know more and as they know more. Also, tentatively, next week is a huge weekend, rather, at least for wrestling fans, where we've got Night of Champions from Saudi Arabia, WWE, May 27th, next Saturday. I do believe that's in the afternoon if you're on the East Coast. It's an early one for you West Coasters out there, but some people might like that. It's on the weekend. You got nothing else to do. And then Sunday, of course, is Sunday night, rather, is AEW's Double or Nothing, their annual May extravaganza for the Memorial Day weekend. So that's two pretty big shows. Double or Nothing is the, quote, bigger show, yet there are three pretty interesting and important matches going on at Night of Champions that could, push Night of Champions over Double or Nothing, although I think Double or Nothing is going to bring a lot. So that'll be fun. But as it regards to the Juice Box, next week, tentatively, but I do believe it's locked in, there will be two separate episodes. One will be the predictions for Double or Nothing, and there will be another separate episode doing predictions for Night of Champions. I thought it would be fair to do that instead of trying to cram both of those pay-per-views / PLEs into one program. They can be divulged and differentiated, so if you'd like one company or the other, you can listen to one, or you can listen to both, or you can listen to neither of them. But if you listen to this show, the odds are you probably will listen to at least one of them next week. Fingers crossed. And it is tentative. Again, I cannot stress that enough. As they say in wrestling, card subject to change. But as of this moment, the card says the Juice Box with Josh Eisenberg on both of those predictions pods. So that'll be fun, engaging, interesting. All the superlatives that we can give for Josh Eisenberg and myself. We love discussing wrestling, as we did on CSR. And I do believe he'll be coming in for those prediction shows. He was on the Backlash predictions and the WrestleMania predictions pods, and they were great. I had fun doing both of them, and I can't wait to do these next two with him as well, because these are big shows, and I do believe around Labor Day they're going to do All Out, and there's going to be potentially another WWE PLE potentially at that same weekend, so we would do the same thing there. So yeah, that's what the Juice Box has in store. We have an upcoming Triple Threat Theater in June. At some point, it'll be announced at a later date. and then 2 separate podcasts for 2 prediction shows next week as well in the feed. So keep an eye out for that. Speaking of the feed, yeah, this is episode 20. It's not a huge milestone or anything, but it's a nice little number that is cool that I've hit. It's really a total of 5 full months of this show, which is awesome. Started it in January to coincide with the year, and just went on this journey, kind of not really blind. I knew what I wanted to do, but got some equipment, kind of just went for it, and we're here. We're still kicking. We're having a good time. We're getting some guests now and again, and wrestling is, not hot as it was in 1998, but it's pretty hot, by today's standards. So it's really refreshing to get to discuss this amongst the airwaves. Especially if you are aware of my own, history in this realm of being a wrestling fan. About 2007, 2008, I began doing YouTube wrestling-related ventures, including Wrestling Figure Federation. I would discuss WWE DVDs and wrestling DVDs and wrestling in general. I went and did I was doing blog talk radio call-in shows throughout 2008, 9, 10 era. As a guest, I also hosted a blog talk radio show 2012 and 2013. All the while doing YouTube stuff throughout that time. And then, did Chair Shot from 2016 to 2018 before that program ended. And I really like doing this, and really, being not a journalist. I do have a journalism degree, which is more than a lot of the people that talk about wrestling can say. Yet I would refer to myself as a wrestling analyst because I'm not reporting on any news. There really is no, once the news breaks, that's it. The news isn't get any bigger because someone reported it first. It's diluted by the time it's announced by 20 different people, and then everybody else can analyze it, and that seems to be the most important, is what is analyzed and the opinions of it all, which is why I decided to do a podcast. I figured this was the last medium I really hadn't tried, an audio-only format that I felt I could get a lot out of, just by talking, a lot for me, no crazy amount of success, or definitely no monetary success, just trying to get, the opinions out there to the world so that we can bounce off each other and banter. That's why I've got the guests coming on. I got Eisenberg, and I got, Josh and Donnie, and I'm going to have some other guests as we continue throughout this first year of the Juice Box. So just a little spiel of me, but enough about me. Let's get into some wrestling. We already discussed this is May 19th. We will do the Vintage Wrestling pay-per-view suggestion later on in this program. And I do believe I have that one. It's going to be an interesting one to select, but we'll get there. Go through my notes as well. Unfortunately, this first note, as you are all well aware, superstar Billy Graham passed away, and the other day, and man, I mean, absolute legend. Absolute legend. He was 79. He honestly could be the catalyst for sports entertainment, as we know it now. And I say that as a guy, superstar Billy Graham. And here's a crazy fact. He's known as great bodybuilder, close friend. He was a close friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but his interview style combined with his physique, his charisma, all those things combined turned superstar Billy Graham into an absolute megastar in the WWF. And I just to know that he was so good on the mic, his charisma, again, combined with how jacked he was, really made him the total package. No pun intended with Lex Luger there, but a guy like this, where he transcended just in-ring ability, and he would cut these promos at such a high level and could back it up in the ring with his physique. He did, of course. He was, of course, the WWE champion one time. He was entered into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2004. And but the interesting fact that I was going to mention is that he never appeared in a wrestling way on pay-per-view, which it's kind of tough to believe. Now, if you're a historian, you kind of get it, because his career kind of ended in 87-ish, I believe, and pay-per-view had only just really popped off. WrestleMania had 3 WrestleManias by then. SummerSlam in 88 was like the next go-around after Survivor Series in 87, so there wasn't really anything he did in the ring anymore, and he retired in November of 87 before Survivor Series 87, so he never even got to wrestle on a pay-per-view, yet he is honestly one of the more legendary pro wrestlers of the 70s, for sure. Wow, I mean, I'm looking at his some of his stats here. The proteges that were under Billy Graham here. I mean, Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Scott Steiner, Jesse the Body Ventura. I mean, all these guys all have similar, the physique's there, or the promos are there, or the charisma's there. Some is all of the above. So, a real loss for the wrestling industry. It's the real legend that Billy Graham was, and he was a trailblazer in the realm of promos, before promos were really the mainstay of certain things in wrestling. The sports entertainment factor. I mean, he was sports entertainment before it was coined. So, R.I.P. to superstar Billy Graham. Definitely a top promo of the 70s, and really over the course of history of professional wrestling. So, sad little note there. Let's tap into some Raw first, then we'll get into the AEW Dynamite, plus the news of Collision, and then we'll close out with some Ask Juice. Let's do some WWE. Let's quickly go through Raw, but we're going to kind of transition to what is going to happen at Night of Champions. Again, we're not going to predict the card and the outcomes. We're going to do that next week. But for now, we're just going to touch on what happened on Raw, how we're getting to Night of Champions, and just overall thoughts. Because now, all of a sudden, Night of Champions does not just have one major match, and that major match, of course, we finally, before last week's pod, we just had Seth freaking Rollins penciled in as one half of the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament final, and we found out last Friday night that, in fact, it will be the one, the only phenomenal AJ Styles to wrestle Seth freaking Rollins for the World Heavyweight title in the tournament final. Wow. These two put on a clinic at Money in the Bank 2019, if you recall, and I believe that was their only pay-per-view match. If I'm wrong, please say something. But you can tweet me at Juicy Steam. But AJ Styles wins. They get this match now for Night of Champions. And again, AJ Styles is a SmackDown talent, yet if he wins, it were to seem that he'll go to Raw. Now, I wouldn't say rumor, but the speculation mill and the idea mill has been kind of running roughshod and rampant about if AJ were to win and he goes to Raw because he has to, a couple of things. does that mean that somebody has to go to SmackDown as like a trade? Do they care about something like that, potentially being fair or not? Two, if AJ Styles were to win, does the OC go with him? Or is the OC even, these are not like my terms, but are they over enough? Are they big enough an entity to go with AJ Styles? Or would it just be AJ and that's it? Although, if AJ were to win the title, I'm assuming he could say, hey, I'm the champion, I want my buddies with me, and it could be signed, sealed, and delivered just like that. But I fully expect this match to be just an unbelievable match. Give them 20 minutes and sit back, because I think we would get something incredible and, dare I say, phenomenal. Seth Rollins and AJ Styles. So we got that. We got that set in stone. We do have Cody and Brock in a, quote, fight. But now we are getting, for the undisputed WWE Tag Team titles, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. That is right. Sami Zayn, who will now be wrestling in Saudi Arabia for the first time since 2014, almost 10 years since he was last over there due to a Syrian conflict that had happened in 2011. Apparently, seems like things are getting a little better over there, because those two, KO and Sami Zayn, and this is for KO's first event in Saudi since the Greatest Royal Rumble in April of 2018, which, more remembered for the Titus O'Neil entrance of that event. But it was also KO's last time in Saudi, as he was also supporting Sami Zayn's cause. These two are defending their undisputed tag titles against the Bloodline, but who is it? Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. Roman basically telling the Usos, like, hey, you couldn't cut it. You guys lost the titles. We're just going to take this into our own hands. The inability to regain these titles. And Paul Heyman said, hey, I can get another match for the Bloodline. And this is what they got. And I can't wait to dissect this with Josh Eisenberg next week. It is going to be a happening for sure. I don't know who's going to take the match here. This could be a Roman loss, which is very rare. I don't see them walking out with the tag titles. I could also see a DQ. There's a lot of things that could happen, so we'll see. I don't want to, get too far into the predictions portion. But that's a huge match. So those three are huge matches for Night of Champions that are now set in stone. We also have announced Bianca Belair versus Asuka for the Raw Women's title, which Asuka, now we'll get into some Raw. Asuka appeared, or was it last week on SmackDown? I'm really not sure. It might have been last week. But now we get Asuka versus Bianca, which I like. I still don't see Bianca losing just yet. And there are rumors of a heel turn with Bianca, and I do believe that was asked in Ask Juice, so I will take care of that there. And then also, we had a battle royal to set up a number one contender for Gunther's Intercontinental Championship, as he is on pace to set a new record as Intercontinental Champion. And we got a great little finish, and Ali, positive Ali, won. So we're going to see Gunther versus Ali at Night of Champions for the IC title. This is definitely a David and Goliath scenario, but I do really, really like the possibilities here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. Although I gotta be honest, I don't see it ending well for Ali. We also saw JD McDonough making a debut, who took out Dolph Ziggler, and it seems like that will be a quick little rivalry to get JD McDonough, kind of acclimated with the roster and the main roster, Theo and Raw, and how things kind of go there. I do, however, believe that his time as a single will be quick, and that he will eventually become a new member of the Judgment Day. So we'll see about that coming up in the few weeks. And we still don't know what we're doing with Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus. It seems that they're going to clash at Night of Champions, but nothing is really set in stone yet. But I would assume it either happens there, or even if it does happen there, I do think SummerSlam could have more involved with Trish. I don't think Trish is one and done here at Night of Champions if they were to wrestle there. Again, there's no title on the line, so I don't know why they would do that. Although Cody and Brock are going to wrestle or fight at Night of Champions, so I guess it doesn't have to be for a title. You know WWE, there are no standards. They can break their own rules. It's their own rules. But of course, this is also the 1,000th day for Roman as Universal Champion, so I would assume, again, not trying to get into the predictions portion, but this is why I think he might have a loss. Yeah, we'll celebrate his 1,000, but gotta tell you, he might see a L. So that is what Raw had. Imperium, we got to see some Imperium action. You got to see some interesting stuff with Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler, which I don't know. Ronda just cannot catch a break. She can't catch traction. She couldn't catch traction on the ramp when she slipped and tried to kick. God, she looked terrible. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't know what they're doing. Ronda, Ronda tried to kick, was it Raquel on the ramp and slipped, and I don't know how someone tries to do a super kick and botches it like that, but it just doesn't do any favors to Ronda. When we've been so critical of her, she had one of the greatest non-wrestler matches as a debut at WrestleMania 34. When she tagged with Kurt Angle to face Triple H and Stephanie. And ever since then, in her main run as women's champion, it has just not been the same. And it's really unfortunate, but I don't know. I don't know what they dropped the ball on Ronda to me. I don't know how much it's her fault or not, but I think it was just been so much easier to keep her as a dominant Brock Lesnar type and just take care of everything. But it's 2023. We're over that, so we're past it. And yeah, we had Balor and Priest defeat KO and Sami Zayn, which was good for the Judgment Day, of course. But now we got some Imperium stuff, because Imperium seems to potentially have a fight coming forward with KO and Sami. We just got a lot of tag teams, a lot of factions being introduced and sustained on the rosters, which is a compliment to Triple H's creative style, and I do enjoy that, I gotta say. So, yeah, we got Night of Champions next week. We'll predict that, myself and Josh Eisenberg. Cannot wait for that. Let's quickly do the Vintage Wrestling pay-per-view to recommend. Then we'll tap into some AEW. And then again, we'll close out with some Ask Juice. So for this week, which I don't know if it's going to be an every week thing, but if I do decide to put out a Vintage Wrestling pay-per-view recommendation, it will be this. We're going to do a little bit of I'm a huge fan of wrestling from 93 and 94, even though I was born in 93. So I didn't live these moments as they happened, but at a young age, I started to be, exposed to some of these older wrestling shows from that time period and a little earlier. And, that's how I fell in love with the whole thing. And so I'm going to pick an event from 93, and it's going to be the inaugural Slamboree. which is a little interesting of a show. I'll run down the card here as we get a very fun opener between Too Cold Scorpio and Marcus Bagwell defeating Bobby Eaton and Chris Benoit. This is 93, and you're getting Benoit and Bobby Eaton, Too Cold Scorpio, and Marcus Bagwell, who's a blue chipper, for sure, in this opening match, which is a fun match. You get Sid Vicious in a squash of Van Hammer, but it's a surprise. I know I just ruined the surprise, but it's fun that it's Van Hammer comes out. He looks like $1 million. He's jacked, and then it's like, well, who's going to wrestle him? And it's Sid Vicious, who's returning after being in the WWF as Sid Justice, and he absolutely mauls Van Hammer, and he's super over. We have a couple of Legends tag matches, which they like to do. You get Sting versus The Prisoner, a.k.a. Nails, because the match between Sting and Scott Norton fell through, which is unfortunate because Scott Norton in 93 was a Japanese just giant and a massive man. We got the Hollywood Blondes against Dos Hombres, which was the Z-Man, Tom Zink, and Ricky Steamboat in a steel cage match for the World Tag Team titles. We get a great Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, NWA heavyweight title match. Arn Anderson did not get very many chances at the world title, but he gets one here against Barry Windham. And then the main event, which I love Haas battles. Huge fan of Vader in 93, 94. Even against, again, Hogan in 95, but Vader versus the Boss in 94, Guardian Angel, same guy, Big Boss Man. But in 93 here, he goes against Flair later on. Cactus Jack. He goes against Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, and this is a 16-minute war between Vader and Bulldog for the WCW World title, and these guys destroy each other. So I would highly recommend this show. It's going to turn 30 years old in 4 days. It happened on May 23rd, 1993 from the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the first Slamboree where they created the WCW Hall of Fame, which is really cool. And I love the Slamboree events. My favorite is 94, so maybe at some point I'll recommend that show. But this was a good little show. I enjoyed the first couple Slamborees for sure. So let's get into some AEW. Because now, Double or Nothing, we talked about Night of Champions, but Double or Nothing seems a little bit more clear. We have 7 matches confirmed, and we'll go over that in a little bit as well. Let's first talk about Collision. It was finally announced this past Wednesday at the Warner Brothers Upfront, which, a big announcement type scenario of, certain programming and ideas and events that were coming through the pipeline of Warner Brothers Discovery for the future. And it still could be, brought up, and it still could happen and reported. But the rumors were that AEW was going to be unveiled that AEW was coming to some sort of streaming deal / extension with Max, aka HBO Max, where you'd get, your pay-per-views potentially through that streaming service. Especially because we don't know, they announced All Out, which is happening on pay-per-view Labor Day weekend, but the week prior is All In at Wembley, over 60,000 tickets sold. But there's no announcement on how other people can watch it that aren't going to be there. So we don't know if it's a pay-per-view. We don't know if it's going to be on a streaming service. We don't really know. And we thought maybe this was going to be the announcement. We're going to get a, $500 million plus deal, 5 years. It's $1 billion. We don't know. A lot of rumors were flying over the course of Monday, Tuesday, and even up Wednesday. However, all that was announced officially was the announcement of the brand new AEW Collision show. This 2-hour live show happening on Saturday night, 8 o'clock, beginning on June 17th. I've got a couple of points here. First, I would not, rule out that they're going to announce something with streaming in Max going forward. I do believe at some point they will get to say, hey, All In's going to be on, HBO Max or Max. You can watch it there. Unless they just go pay-per-view. But I really highly doubt that they're going to go back-to-back weekends of pay-per-view and assuming people are going to buy both. Now, like people like me absolutely would buy both because I think the Wembley show is going to be a must-see event, which is why I hope there's some way to watch it at home. But I do think that announcement comes at some point. I don't know what the deal could be. I don't know much of the details, but I do believe that's coming. It just wasn't happening now. In regards to Collision, okay, so AEW Dark and Dark Elevation, I do believe, are either on hiatus or they're done, for good, which is great. They served a good purpose. Get young talent in there, quote jobbers, local talents, plus up and coming talents. I think of like your Sky Blues and Serpenticos and just like undercard guys and girls that will be elevated at some point. The pun very intended there, but just not yet. However, with that gone, and now with Ring of Honor being under the AEW umbrella, but trying to maintain some semblance of its own identity as its own little brand, I think that will be where you see these up-and-comers. They'll be, it'll be branded as they're wrestling on Ring of Honor, but it's really, it's AEW using a existing brand as their own NXT farm system to filter throughout their roster, right? So if you got, like Claudio, he's a Ring of Honor World Champion, right? But to me, he's still going to be on AEW, and at some point he'll have, those things will come to fruition with those guys that are doing double duty. But to me, Ring of Honor is going to be more of that. Maybe guys that aren't on the main two shows now, and they're going to be the Ring of Honor, and it's like less than, but it's still kind of put forth as important. This Collision show, so when they did Rampage, that seemed to be their second show, right? And it was an hour. It was live sometimes, then it was taped, and then it was taped a lot of the time, and then it was taped all the time, and then it was preempted for this and that, and this basketball game, or this hockey game, or this show. It would be on at 6 p.m., 10 p.m., 12 a.m., whenever this playoff game concludes, and there was never any consistency, and you could see that in the ratings when we are getting 200,000 viewers for a Rampage. Oh my God, pull the plug. But they decided to double down. Clearly Warner sees that there's stuff here with AEW. You can have bum ratings for Rampage, and that's not going to shy away Warner Brothers from putting forth money. And I do believe that they now, with this show, this is way different than your Rampage. I do think that Collision now, and it's easy just to make this comparison so that other people can understand, Dynamite and Collision now will be more of a Raw and SmackDown-esque entity where you get two separate-ish rosters, because they did announce Miro, Andrade, Thunder Rosa are going to be on this new Collision show. But they didn't say that they can't wrestle on Dynamite. I just think that they will be like the face of Collision in that, brand. I also like that it's live. If they can keep it live, that is very important. More people will tune in to a show if it's live. As soon as you start preempting things, and I know, look, it's going to get dicey once we come into fall. There's going to, and I'll address this with an Ask Juice question about PLEs or pay-per-views being on Saturday nights. What's going to happen with that, with a Saturday Collision? Will they make it on Friday? Will they change the dates? It could get convoluted, but I do think a 2-hour live show is a better way to sustain all this talent that you have. And they do. They have a lot of talent. But I think that their talent now is enough to sustain 2 main shows instead of a show that it's a main show. And then, whoever's left can maybe get a segment on Rampage every other week. This is 2 hours on another night with another roster that can push that. And I think it'll help in the long run. We'll see how it starts. We got a lot of questions and not a lot of answers, but we'll get there. I'll also address the CM Punk here and Ask Juice. A couple other things that I love, specifically because I'm a WCW mega fan, as everybody here knows. The design of Collision's logo is 1,000% an homage to WCW Monday Nitro's logo, which I love. And it also is on Saturday night, although it's at 8 p.m. instead of 6:05, which, if you're unaware, that was the WCW Saturday night slot. The time slot was always 6:05 on TBS, which was always fantastic to look forward to. But, this is just going to be an 8 o'clock primetime show. We'll see what happens. Now, I'm also looking at the little press release, and it says that the headliners for this show, it says Thunder Rosa, Miro, Samoa Joe, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Andrade El Idolo. On the poster, it's got Samoa Joe, it's got Hobbs and Thunder Rosa, it's got Miro. It also has the House of Black, who are the Trios champions. It's got FTR, who's the tag champions. It's got the international champion in Orange Cassidy, and it's got the AEW champion in MJF. So, if you're a champion in general, I do believe you can go to both brands and wrestle, be on there, be featured, have a segment, what have you. So, I like that the champions can kind of float. That's what WWE should have done, but now they're just making everything convoluted because that's what they love to do. So we're going to find out what happens with this show. It's going to be very fascinating. Once we hit into June, we're going to be, off to the races with more programming for AEW. This time I think it's a little different, and I do believe if they get this CM Punk in there, we'll talk about it and Ask Juice at the end of the show. But we're going to get you're going to get some separate rosters. I think you're going to get some new matchups. I have faith. I really do. It's going to be hesitant, Rampage was a good start and a great little show to start. Christian winning the TNA title was great off Kenny Omega. I was there for that. Of course, CM Punk returning to wrestling on that show, and it served its purpose, but I do think they need a second main show, and that's what this is going to be. Let's see. Let's just go to... Okay, so on Dynamite, in addition to the Collision announcement, they announced that Collision is going to be... there's a few dates planned ahead for Collision's tapings, a bunch in Canada leading up to the Forbidden Door pay-per-view in Toronto. However, the first one on June 17th has not been announced yet, and the rumor is it will be at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. Do with that what you will. We'll get to that later on. On Dynamite, we finally saw Hangman Adam Page join forces with his mates, the Elite, and we are going to get the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page versus the Blackpool Combat Club in the Anarchy in the Arena match at Double or Nothing, which will be fantastic. However, 2 caveats. Either this stays a 4-on-4, and that's great, and maybe they do a blood and guts match later on and it's 5-on-5, or they even add one person per team for this match. All I'm getting at is I could envision Takeshita potentially going to the Blackpool Combat Club and the Elite gaining one Kota Ibushi. So, we'll see what happens. We also got announced a Christian Cage Wardlow ladder match for the AEW TNT title, which I am very much looking forward to. Tony Storm and Jamie Hayter are going to go for the AEW Women's World title. Very much looking forward. to those matches. Again, next week we'll get some predictions with Josh Eisenberg on both of these big shows. But yeah, Dynamite, I thought was really good. I enjoyed the Orange Cassidy Darby match against Lee Moriarty and Big Bill. Sammy Guevara got a squash match, and Orange Cassidy did not. Ricky Starks did not. He had to face Jay White. Jack Perry didn't get a... I mean, well, okay. Ricky Starks is not a part of the four-way, but I call him one of the... He's a pillar, a Jace, you know, and he had a fun match with Jay White. But there was a DQ, so it really wasn't a followed-through match. Yeah, we had Roosh versus Jack Perry, which was crazy, and Jack Perry almost got his neck severely injured with a belly, I believe, off the apron to the floor, which is very dangerous. But yeah, this is a good little Dynamite, and again, the Collision announcement was pretty much the big deal. We also have confirmed a Blackjack Battle Royale, which will be a 21-person battle royal at Double or Nothing. 20 competitors, and Orange Cassidy will be in that match. We also had the great Falls Count Anywhere match between Chris Jericho and Roderick Strong, where the JAS and Adam Cole were banned from the building. And of course, they went outside the arena, and Adam Cole just shows up behind Jericho, which was genius. And he was outside of the arena. And Roddy Strong pinned Jericho in the dirt, which was fantastic. So, will we see Adam Cole and Jericho at Double or Nothing? I would say yes. We'll probably find that out next week on Dynamite. Some other quick little notes. There is a schedule that WWE released for upcoming events leading up to SummerSlam. From May 19th tonight up until SummerSlam August 5th in Detroit. And there, SmackDown and Raw are coming to the following: South Carolina, Hershey, Albany, Wilkes-Barre, Hartford, Des Moines, all these other places. Pittsburgh's not getting one of them. Am I miffed? Potentially. Am I turning it into a positive, saying that maybe they'll do a PLE in Pittsburgh later in the year? I'm being positive, but I'm not going to work myself into a shoot and say it's going to happen. Although, could you imagine Survivor Series in Pittsburgh with War Games? I don't know if I could take it, but I would love it as a WCW fan. So that's a little bit disappointing. At least that was. Let's get into, I believe that's all I had in general for these particular topics. Like I said, we're going to do predictions next week for Double or Nothing and Night of Champions with one Josh Eisenberg. But before we end the show, let's tap into a new little segment. Again, to be determined the name of the segment, but I'm just going to call it Ask Juice, where anybody can ask me questions regarding wrestling, and I will tackle them here on the program. I've got 4 pertinent questions, and I'll try to answer them the best that I can. Some seem more long-form than others, but I'll do what I can. The first one is, do I see Gunther losing at Night of Champions? And if he were to lose, would he go against Rollins at SummerSlam for the world title, or would he win Money in the Bank? Well, my opinion on this, I really could see Gunther losing at Night of Champions, although I don't know if that would take away the record. I'm not sure the current record in the days for IC champion with him and Honky Tonk Man. So if he hasn't broken the record yet, I think it would be a mistake for him to lose before he breaks that record. I've mentioned this a few times. I've been on some Twitter Spaces over the last couple of weeks, and I mentioned that, they did it with Demolition, right? Demolition had the tag title record. The New Day broke that. They've had a lot of records in general with the world titles. I know CM Punk had the 434-day reign back in 2012, 2013, which is a big deal. But now with Roman Reigns coming up on 1,000 days as Universal Champion, I do believe that they are trying to get him to a certain record that he'll hold for a long time. And as well, we have the Intercontinental title with Honky Tonk Man having that record, and I think they might want Gunther to take that. Same with John Cena and the 16 world titles. I mean, it's clear that they maybe wanted him to beat it at some point, but now that they didn't, I'm sure they never expected Cena to blow up in the mainstream as a movie star like he has, but I'm sure they're all the more happier for it because he can cross promote like a maniac and bring WWE even more money. But I do think at some point they'd like to have Cena as the guy that has 17 world titles. So, I can see Gunther losing. I'm not going to make that prediction yet. We'll get to that next week, but I could see it. And let's say he loses at Night of Champions. I would say potentially a heavy favorite to win Money in the Bank, although I could honestly just see him winning a number one contenders match and going after Rollins if Rollins were to win that world title. I don't see it being necessary for Gunther to win a Money in the Bank. I think that's still destined for Cody. And I just think Gunther could, win something on his own outright and challenge for a title, which we could see. Give me Gunther and Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. I'll be happy. And this question also poses a potential Bianca heel turn, what my thoughts would be on that. I think I mentioned it before. It's tough to envision Bianca Belair as a heel. She's just such a great babyface. Her look is very babyface. Her hair is such a... the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, hosted by Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, and Smart Mark Sterling. When they talk about certain wrestlers' gear and what they look like, or during a match if they got blood, or whatever the look might be, they have a term for that. Is if it were to turn into an action figure, a toy, and they call it toyetic. Is this entrance gear toyetic? And is that means is this so memorable, so important, so awesome looking that it could be turned into a toy and then be sold and be a successful seller because it looks so great and like infamous, like certain gears from certain events. And so to me, Bianca Belair is just toyetic, but she's very, good guy about her. Again, the hair is a huge part of it. Just she's so bouncy and bubbly and just always very happy, and she's been such a great ambassador for WWE. Her and Montez, to be fair, it's just Montez has not gotten the singles push yet. But I do think Bianca could turn heel. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I've called her Jane Cena before. She overcomes all the odds. She wins every match she's in practically. We'll see what happens at Night of Champions. But she is so dominant, and I think it's easy for WWE to just ride that wave until maybe they got someone else that could take that spot. But let's just look ahead. If she's going to wrestle Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania 40, she's still going to be a babyface. So I don't see it happening anytime soon, but I could envision Bianca at some point being a heel. People said the same thing with Bayley. Bayley could never be a heel. She's so nice. She's so down to earth. She's so lovable. She's one of the best heels WWE has right now. So give it time. Give Bianca time to grow. She could be a heel. We got another question. How will AEW counter WWE's pay-per-views on Saturdays with Collision? Do you see them putting on something like a Grand Slam type of show to go head-to-head with a SummerSlam? I could see that. And that's where we're going to get dicey. I mean, look, let's just say for example, Collision is going to happen August 5th, right? We don't know where Collision would take place, but let's assume it takes place during SummerSlam. It's very obvious, and it's not like Tony Khan wouldn't know this, but he would clearly say, "Look, we're not going to get a crazy rating, probably, but we should still put on something as a clear, strong alternative, and you can't just phone it in." I wouldn't want them to phone in any show, but you can't phone in a potentially pay-per-view competing TV show. So I would love to see if they wanted to do, and I'm pretty sure they will. I'm pretty sure they'll do Grand Slam again. If they do it in September, that's still I really don't know. But if they were to pull off it in August and do it head to head with a SummerSlam, it's akin to the Clash of the Champions against pay-per-views back in the day, when it was the original Clash of the Champions against WrestleMania 4. Stuff like that, I think that could be beneficial, where if you have a hot card, you'll pop a big TV rating. It's just you won't, the wrestling world will probably be focused on SummerSlam. So we'll see how AEW navigates those waters. But as a wrestling fan, I am incredibly intrigued, because you could see great, God, you have 2 TVs in your house, you could have, or a laptop, you could be watching just the best stuff on certain days that'll have both types of shows. We're already next weekend getting 2 major events on Saturday and one on Sunday. So competition's great. I with the Collision now on a Saturday night, UFC as well, and UFC and WWE are under the same umbrella now, so it's a war. It's not a war between companies, but it's like the shows are just going to be competing for wrestling fans' interest. And as a wrestling fan myself, I am chomping at the bit with my fork and knife and my remote, excited to find out what great stuff's coming out in the next week. So I'm looking forward to it. 2 more here. If Roman and Solo Sikoa win the tag titles, like I said, at Night of Champions, they're challenging. Does that add more pressure for the WWE to get right the person to dethrone Roman? I don't know if it helps. I would agree. I think it would add pressure to WWE to make sure that someone important enough dethrones Roman. I think that even if they were to get the tag titles, Cody could still be the option. However, and again, not trying to delve too into the predictions portion, but I think that this match is more of a vehicle for a continued dissension of the bloodline, whether Solo takes the pin or the Usos cost them the match. I just don't know, because the only other way I could see it is if they were to win the tag titles and then Solo somehow has his Jey Uso moment and even gets pushed by the Usos to, hey, why are you Roman's little bitch? Like, we were helping him all this time for so long, and he's, spit in our face. He pushed us to the side because we couldn't win. What happens if you can't win, You're just going to be just like us. So there's some avenues they could travel. I just don't know. I'm not sure WWE knows who the right person to dethrone Roman is. But at this point, I think, Cody lost at WrestleMania, right? Heartbroken. Gets the victory over Brock. Maybe he loses to Brock and gets beat down. Maybe he gets another win. But he's going to find that adversity, and I think he's going to end up at Money in the Bank, and he's going to win that briefcase, and that's going to be his big key to finishing the story. God, I hope so. I'm over it. And then finally, I'm sure this is a Josh Cross question. How long does CM Punk stay on Collision before he has another blow-up? So assuming that CM Punk is a mainstay focal point of Collision, I don't think he will blow up. I really do think that it's not necessarily water under the bridge, but I do firmly believe that a majority of the guys involved with Brawl Out have seen the error of their ways. hopefully have just eaten their ego and just kind of, realized that there is so much money just on the table right in front of them waiting to be taken, in regards to great storytelling and paying off great matches between the guys that were involved in that real life event. So if Punk stays on Collision, yeah, he might not be sharing locker rooms with Omega and the Bucks and Hangman or whoever, but I think down the line they could have, maybe Punk wants to interfere with a match on that side if they're on Dynamite. I think this creates Punk, especially because the rumors of the United Center show are the second coming. I mean, in storyline that builds up CM Punk's ego, let alone if it does in real life, but it's so perfectly utilized, and that seems like what they could be doing is that they could push the narrative in storyline that CM Punk is this maniac, he didn't want this, he wanted his own show, and that might be all it takes as a catalyst for one of those other guys to be pissed and to wrestle him at some point down in the future. I still think that the opening program for CM Punk coming back is going to be Samoa Joe, which, as a fan of Ring of Honor in those days, oh my God. I got into Ring of Honor right in the 07-08 era, so Tyler Black, a.k.a. Seth Rollins, and the Age of the Fall with Jimmy Jacobs and guys like that. I believe like the Briscoes were around, and Kevin Steen, El Generico, those guys, that era of Ring of Honor was right after the summer of Punk and Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles and CM Punk and Samoa Joe and those wars. Why can't I think of... Is it Morishima? I'm looking this up right now. Forgive the silence. Yeah, Morishima. Oh my God. Takeshi Morishima versus Samoa Joe were... Oh my God. Those matches too, like, they were really what got me into the independent wrestling of it all. Realizing, hey, there's more out there than WWE. There's even more out there than just like TNA. That kind of got me down the rabbit hole of Ring of Honor, indie wrestling. Then I got into, CZW because everybody gets into crazy wrestling at one point or another. It led me into PWG. I ended up going to PWG twice in Reseda, California. I made cross-country trips for that. And now all those types of guys and companies have formulated into AEW now. And, in Seth Rollins and KO and Sami Zayn's case, are, AJ Styles, those guys are leading WWE. So all those things have now culminated in what the future is wrestling is now, is, back in those Ring of Honor early days. And that's where I think they're going to go with CM Punk and Samoa Joe to begin this collision thing. So I'm hoping that's the case. I'll say this. I think if CM Punk has another... If something were to happen again to that degree, I think CM Punk should walk away from wrestling until he, ultimately would go to WWE and close out everything. But I think that they have all kind of seen what is out there and that it didn't blow up as much as I think it could have. And I do believe that they see the money. Because that's all that they want at the end of the day. They want a great product for the fans. They want to be happy with their monetary, stability and financial whatever, and all at the same time. So I think if they see that, and if Tony Khan can just chill these guys out and be like, oh my God, we have all this stuff laid out. Like it can be so great if we just follow this plan. Why do we have to, hate each other and all this BS? Like, why do we have to have that happen? It's, So if he, reins him in and keeps CM Punk his head on straight, which CM Punk, I think, knows. I think he knows. I think those other guys, I think they all know. Let's just do this thing, and let's just try to be professional. If they keep it professional, I don't see another blow up. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to seeing CM Punk back on TV. I mean, it's he is a needle mover. I mentioned this earlier. Someone had been mentioning how, CM Punk really hasn't. What was the exact tweet? Punk does not pop a rating, and has not in a while, and buy rates didn't take a big jump after he came in. Besides his debut, and there's a tweet where the 5 pay-per-views he was on were the AEW's 5 highest selling pay-per-views. He had 2 $1 million gate shows that he main evented, and he drew a third one that he wasn't even on. 4 of the top selling items for Shop AEW and Pro Wrestling Tees are his. And the quarter hour appearances that he was on increased. So it's all there. It's all real. Punk is a draw. And again, if they see the money, if they realize that it's all right there, if we just chill our egos, this is not 1996. We don't have to just, I have a guaranteed contract, I'm not going to work. I have creative control. I hate this guy. I don't like this. Blah, 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 blah. The inmates run the asylum. This is not Eric Bischoff. This is Tony Khan. I have faith in Tony Khan. And I hope CM Punk has faith in everybody. Because we all have faith that it'll work out for him and them and AEW. So, that was Ask Juice. Hopefully this becomes a recurring segment. I just like having these little long-form things of you pop a question out here, and I get to kind of elongate the answer and kind of get into a deeper, opinionated-based answer outside of the realm of what I normally would talk about, or topics I wouldn't necessarily come up with on my own. So it's nice to have some help driving this vehicle. So thanks for that, everybody who chimed in with a question. Hopefully we'll do this again next week. Or maybe not next week. We'll have the prediction shows for Night of Champions and Double or Nothing. That will be myself, Juice Springsteen, and Josh Eisenberg. Once again, you can follow me on Twitter at JuicySteen. Follow this podcast, juicysteen.podbean.com. My iTunes, you can also find it. Google Podcast, at the Juice Box. And what am I forgetting? Instagram, Juicy Wrestling Closet. You know all of them. I ran them all down. I'll run them all down again. Anywhere you can see me, find me. Let's tweet about it. Let's talk about it. Ask Juice. We got predictions next week. We got Triple Threat Theater coming up in a few weeks. Wrestling's exciting. We got 2 main shows. We got a new world title. CM Punk's coming back. Things are looking up for pro wrestling. Let's just be happy about it. And let's be happy that we have 2. That's right, 2 episodes of the Juice Box next week with myself and Josh Eisenberg. But as for now, this has been the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, the 20th episode of it. And I hope to see you guys next week for more of the Juice Box. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.